At first, it may not look like a problem. No one sees it, no one knows, no one gets hurt. And because it stays private, it can feel separate from the rest of your life. Like a closed door, a hidden tab, a small routine that belongs only to you. But private habits have a strange way of staying private long after they start changing things. Your sleep, your focus, your confidence, your relationships, your ability to choose. That is what makes this hard to notice. If another habit was taking your sleep every night, you might see it quickly. If another habit was making you break promises to yourself, you might question it. If another habit was shrinking your real life, someone else might notice. But this one can hide. So this is not a video about whether masturbation is bad. For many adults, masturbation can be a normal private behavior. It can be occasional. It can be chosen. It can exist without distress or consequences. The real question is more specific. Is the habit still listening when you say no? This is not a diagnosis. It is a self-audit. 7 signs that a private habit may deserve attention. Not panic, attention. And the whole audit comes down to 4 words: control, distress, impairment, consequences. These are not random words. They are close to the language used in medical discussions of compulsive sexual behavior. Mayo Clinic describes concern when sexual behaviors become a major focus, are difficult to control, cause problems in life, or become harmful. The World Health Organization's ICD-11 also focuses on repeated difficulty controlling sexual impulses or behaviors, with marked distress or impairment. In other words, the issue is not simply having sexual desire. The issue is what the pattern does to your life. Not frequency alone, not shame alone, not internet panic. Those 4 words. They are the difference between worry and evidence. Think of them like a dashboard. One light by itself may not mean the whole system is failing. But when several lights turn on at the same time, you should probably look under the hood. Control asks, can I stop when I decide to stop? Distress asks, is this pattern making me feel trapped, anxious, ashamed, or afraid of myself? Impairment asks, is it affecting my daily life? Consequences ask, do I keep doing it even after it costs me something real? That is why this video is not built around a magic number. Not once a week, not once a day, not any single number. Numbers can matter, but only in context. The same frequency can mean different things in different lives. The pattern is the point. Sign 1. You keep breaking your own rules. You tell yourself not tonight, not before sleep, not during work, not with porn, not again today. Then the moment arrives and the rule disappears. One broken rule does not define you. Everyone breaks their own rules sometimes. But repeated broken rules can reveal something important. The issue is not that you had desire. The issue is that your own boundaries stopped mattering. That is the first shift. The habit moves from chosen to automatic, from something you decide to something that seems to start before you have fully agreed. This is why control matters more than frequency. Someone may masturbate often and feel no distress, no impairment, and no loss of choice. Someone else may masturbate less often but feel trapped by the pattern. The number alone is not the sign. The sign is the repeated gap between what you decide and what happens next. Sign 2. It starts replacing sleep. This sign matters because sleep and orgasm are connected in research. A 2023 Journal of Sleep Research Diary study found that both partnered sex and masturbation with orgasm were perceived as improving sleep latency and sleep quality. That may sound positive, and sometimes it is. But it also means masturbation can become part of a sleep routine. If the routine moves later and later, the short-term relaxation can start costing the sleep it was supposed to help. Sleep is often the first thing a private habit quietly takes, not because one late night ruins your life, because the pattern repeats. You plan to sleep at 11, then it becomes midnight, then 1. Then the next day begins with fog, guilt, and low energy. Sleep loss makes almost everything harder. Mood gets worse. Focus gets worse. Impulse control gets worse. Stress tolerance gets worse. And when stress gets worse, the habit may become more tempting. That creates a loop. You use the habit to unwind. The habit delays sleep. Poor sleep makes tomorrow harder. Tomorrow's stress sends you back toward the same habit. That is not a moral failure. It is a feedback loop. And if sleep keeps losing, the habit is no longer staying in its lane. Sign 3. It becomes your main stress tool. Not one way to relax, the main way. Every uncomfortable feeling starts routing into the same behavior. Anxiety, boredom, frustration, sadness, rejection, restlessness. The body learns a shortcut. Feel bad, seek relief, feel temporary calm. That shortcut can work in the moment, but if it becomes the only tool, life gets smaller. Stress is not processed. Loneliness is not answered. Boredom is not explored. Conflict is not repaired. The feeling is simply muted for a while. This is where a habit can become less about pleasure and more about escape. And escape is not always harmful. Everyone escapes sometimes. The problem begins when escape becomes the only door. If every emotional road leads to the same private routine, the habit may be carrying more weight than it was meant to carry. Sign 4. Porn becomes the engine. This needs careful framing. Porn is common enough that it should be named, but not treated as automatic pathology. In a nationally representative U.S. probability sample published in PLOS One, about 53% of men and 25% of women reported watching sexually explicit videos or DVDs in the past year. For men ages 25 to 29, the number was about 69%. So the question is not, did porn ever appear? The better question is, did porn change the loop? Masturbation and pornography are not the same thing. Some people masturbate without porn. Some people watch porn without feeling out of control. Some people never use it at all. But for others, porn changes the loop. The habit is no longer just about sexual release. It becomes search, novelty, scrolling, comparison, longer sessions, more extreme choices, more time disappearing. The sign is not that porn exists. The sign is that the behavior feels increasingly driven by the screen. You planned 5 minutes, then 30 are gone. You plan to stop. Then another clip, another search, another tab. You may not even feel more satisfied. You may just feel pulled forward. That pull deserves attention. Not because the internet should diagnose you, because your attention, time, and choice are real parts of your life. Sign 5. Real life gets smaller. This is one of the clearest signs. The habit starts displacing things that matter. Work, school, exercise, hygiene, social plans, dating, sexual intimacy, responsibilities, creative work, basic rest. At first, it may only take scraps of time. Then it starts taking the best time, the hour you needed for sleep, the focus you needed for work, the honesty you needed in a relationship, the energy you needed to leave the room and live your life. Problematic behavior is often measured by cost. What is it taking? What is it replacing? What keeps getting postponed? If the answer is nothing, the concern may be low. But if life keeps shrinking around the habit, the private pattern is no longer private in its effects. It has crossed the door. It is showing up in the rest of your day. And sometimes it shows up quietly, not as a disaster, as a slow narrowing. You stop texting people back. You stop starting projects. You stop feeling present with a partner. You stop trusting your own bedtime. You keep your life technically functioning, but smaller than it could be. That is why impairment does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a life with less room in it. Sign 6. Distress replaces pleasure. This part is delicate. Guilt is not always evidence of harm. Some people feel guilty because of culture, religion, fear, misinformation, or shame they were taught before they had language for it. That kind of guilt can be painful, but it does not automatically mean the behavior is clinically harmful. Distress is different when it comes with loss of control and consequences. I do not want this pattern, but I keep returning to it. I feel worse afterward, but I repeat it anyway. I am hiding it because it is affecting my life. I am scared by how automatic it feels. I keep promising myself change, then breaking the promise. That kind of distress deserves care. Not self-hatred, care. Because shame often tightens the loop. You feel bad, you seek relief, you feel worse, you seek relief again. The goal is not to add more shame. The goal is to understand the pattern clearly enough to change it. Sign 7. You cannot choose differently. This is the center of the whole video. Choice. Can you pause? Can you delay? Can you stop when you decide to stop? Can you choose another response when the urge appears? Can you tolerate discomfort without immediately running the same routine? If skipping the habit creates panic, agitation, repeated failure, or a feeling that you are not in control, that is important information. Again, it is not a diagnosis, but it is a signal. The concern is not sexual desire. The concern is a pattern that seems to override your own agency. So what do these 7 signs not mean? They do not mean daily masturbation is automatically a problem. They do not mean high libido is a disorder. They do not mean being single is a problem. They do not mean relaxing sometimes is wrong. They do not mean cultural guilt equals clinical harm. They do not mean one bad week defines you, and they do not mean you are broken. They also do not mean the answer has to be permanent abstinence. For some people, a reset period helps them see the pattern. For others, reducing porn is more important than stopping masturbation. For others, the real change is protecting sleep, putting the phone outside the bedroom, or dealing with stress before midnight. Different patterns need different responses. That is why honest self-audits are more useful than shame-based rules. A rule says, this behavior is always bad. Denial says, this behavior can never be a problem. An audit says, what is happening in my actual life? Am I choosing this? Is it costing me something? Is it helping me avoid something I need to face? Is there a healthier way to meet the same need? Those questions are harder than panic. But they are also kinder and usually more accurate. They leave room for a more human answer. Maybe the habit is fine. Maybe it needs boundaries. Maybe it needs help. The goal is to see clearly enough to choose. They mean, look at the pattern. Control, distress, impairment, consequences, cost, choice. That is the self-audit. If the habit is occasional, chosen, and not harming your life, the answer may be simple. You may not need panic. You may need less shame. But if the pattern feels out of control, causes significant distress, disrupts sleep, work, relationships, or daily life, or continues despite consequences, it may be time to talk to a qualified mental health or sexual health professional. This is not a rare imaginary concern. In a JAMA Network open study of 2,325 U.S. adults, researchers found that 6% screened at a clinically relevant level for distress and impairment related to difficulty controlling sexual feelings, urges, and behaviors. That screen is not the same as giving every person a diagnosis, but it does show that a meaningful minority of adults report real distress around control. That is why the goal should be care, not mockery. That does not have to mean a dramatic label. It does not have to mean a lifelong identity. It can simply mean you are asking for help with a loop that has become hard to change alone. Support may involve understanding triggers, treating anxiety or mood problems, changing digital routines, rebuilding sleep, or learning better ways to handle stress. It may also involve separating problems that have been tangled together. Maybe the issue is not masturbation itself. Maybe it is late-night isolation. Maybe it is compulsive porn use. Maybe it is untreated anxiety. Maybe it is shame so intense that any sexual feeling becomes frightening. Maybe it is a relationship problem that has been pushed into private behavior instead of conversation. That is why a careful answer matters. If you call everything addiction, you may miss the real cause. If you dismiss everything as normal, you may ignore real harm. The honest path is between those extremes. Name the pattern. Look at the cost. Get help if the cost is real. The point is not punishment. The point is choice. One sign does not define you. 7 signs do not make you broken, but they do ask a question. Is this still a private choice, or has it quietly become the thing choosing for you?